Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Growing Up Alien. It's been a while since I've posted. Recovering from a cold, which is last week, and that's all over. But just been spending a lot of time trying to get my body back in connection to itself. I don't know if it was the winter or what happened, but I was pretty um, fractured, I guess to say, and I needed to get my body back into sort of a toned state, a toned state, physically, and spiritually, I suppose the word, emotionally, whatever you want to call it. So I'm still doing that, and I'm hanging out, that's about it, right? Just seeing, waiting for orders. I don't know, you name it. But there's been some weird, shit going on that I think that we should address. I'm still kind of wound up for the last one. I don't like to bring up people's videos, but I'm going to this time simply because it's so shocking that I think it needs to be addressed. So before I do that, I just want to mention a few things because it's so important for the people on this planet to realize they're just another race of humanoid, and you are not separate from, you are fully involved in whatever's going on in the galactic realm. So some of us understand that, but most people don't, and that's actually behind a lot of what's being driven and what has happened on this planet. So um, there's a lot of coming and going between different extraterrestrial groups, and that's allowed by the cabal that runs this place. So people know the governments. It's not the governments, it's run by a cabal. It's run by an interstellar corporation. It's run by the syndicate. And this is just one of these backwater planets. There are many planets that are run by them, and this happens to be one of them. And it's just one of the backwater planets that they are holding on to because they have resources here that they like to use for economic purposes, for mercantile purposes. And part of that resource is the humans living on this planet. It's worth noting that some of the stagnation, all of the foot, some of the foot dragging, some of the can kicking, not only down here, but also upstairs, has to do with, for different reasons, many factions, groups, whatever, political structures that don't want and basically never want the race on this planet understanding who they are and letting them become interstellar. Because the race on this planet is naturally telepathic, is naturally psychic. You will see and hear and read from many different visitors that they will assert it's interesting, it's curious, and it's been studied that why is the race here on this planet, which is largely, a little backwards. And again, we know why, we're not getting into the whole story, right? Well, that's part of it, actually. Why have they been held back? And there's a reason for that. Because they don't want this race upstairs. They don't want this race going interstellar. Because it's powerful. And I'm just going to give one example here. I know, of course, we've heard from Eeka and the benevolent. So there's benevolent humanoids, right? Those are our family. Those are largely a help Pleiadian. You have Alpha Centauri, you have Tau Ceti, you have a lot of Venusians, you have Clarion, you have the group that's part of the W56, which is a large selection and collection of many different extraterrestrial races that are humanoid that have no problem. Even you have the Yemites. They're a little different, but they definitely wouldn't have a problem with that. And it amazes them that, hey, in more of a curiosity, that this race here on this planet is uniquely, naturally telepathic. So Eeka has chips in his head. I was telepathic back home. That's actually was one of my kind of perks. This is one of my skills is to be a mystic. But it's key for the people on this planet to understand that. And for those of us who are envoys in these Terran bodies to begin to actually realize and exploit the natural aspects of the Terran form for you to become psychic telepathic or to use it for different psychic abilities. If you look back through the past, millennia of the past, and some of the firmament of your different Levant religions. Not so much the mythology that was always the religions of indigenous people or like the Celts, those kinds of groups, where they've always been called the barbarians and that their religions weren't religions, they were mythology, that kind of stuff. And the only religions are the Levant religions. Those are real religions, right? So, but all of those religions very strongly denounce and very heavily punished, or did heavily punish, death penalty punish, torture punish anyone who attempted any type of what we call psychic, psionic ability. So for folks who may have grown up in any of these religions, you probably will remember that engaging in any kind of these, that was witchcraft, right? Any kinds of activities that were psychic, it was vilified. It was heavily censored. It was considered dangerous, right? So however you look at it, engaging in any kind of psychic activity, which was the nature of the Terran, was heavily suppressed for obvious reasons. Now, it wasn't suppressed for the reasons that most people think, because everything you're fed is a lie. They were using reasons, oh, it's, you got to be careful. They always will give you that you're not capable of handling things. No, this is, Jesus doesn't like it. Jesus is the reason for, the antis, all that stuff, the anti-psychic stuff. They'll use a bunch of shit like that, and because it's fear. So they'll use fear and control and violence to suppress whatever they don't want a group to begin to experiment in, understand, or God forbid use, right? That kind of thing. So we have something that came out here again in the New Age, when I'm going to say, like, well, you've always had certain interests in psychic ability, called psychic ability, shamanism, all those things in your indigenous groups. So in different parts of Africa, different parts of the East, and areas in Australia, New Zealand, of course, in the Americas and South America, blah, blah, right, with the indigenous people that would engage in these kinds of things. And 90% of the indigenous people in the Americas were moved. So that's why there was such a campaign to shut up, extremely violently, any of these groups, Africa, the indigenous Americas, again, some parts of the East, of course, as well. China was suppressed, the opium trade, things like that. So there's all these groups that were holding information or cultivating and using information and methods and things that the cabal, the syndicate, didn't want. So those groups were heavily suppressed and crushed, to put it mildly. Things like voodoo and everything, but heavily crushed. That is the skill of the Terrans on this planet. And of course, animals are masters of psychic ability or telepathy and all these things. Animals hold all the keys to this. And many of your indigenous cultures here in the Americas would say that the animals are the teachers, because they understand all this stuff. Because the animals are not mind controlled by any humanoid type of philosophy. And this type of I don't know, is this desire, this draw for humanoids to fill their heads with strange societal methods. It doesn't matter where you are, what planet. If there's a humanoid, they have some kind of peculiar spirituality or some kind of thing. They have a culture, or they have a way of being. There's rules, things that you don't see in other animal cultures. Now, animals have language and culture and society. They pass on knowledge. They have all these things, but it's based more in a non-woo-woo, for lack of a better word, concept. And there isn't peer pressure for beliefs, very complicated belief storylines, whatever you want to call them. I always say, everyone, even upstairs, they all have religions, beliefs, religions. It's all the same thing. It's all unprovable. Animals don't, and they're not pressured by any kind of group to have a weird list of belief systems that you see in the humanoid. So anyway, that's my rant on humans. Maybe it's the avian coming out again. Oh gosh, human. I'm just going to read this first. This is an interview of one of the W-56s. So W-56s were a mixed group of humanoid extraterrestrials. So I don't know who there's from all over, right? So one of these individuals did an interview with a German fellow. And he explains this thing that the humans on this planet have. So he's in conversation about, they're talking about understanding yourself and idea of spirituality and all that, blah, blah, existential type things. So he says, and that's what we're trying to do, understand, right, ourselves and others. You may see that we and the CTRs means contrary in Italian, and the CTRs are one of the groups that we would consider regressive. The CTRs do not have a soul. They are a biological synthetic. How can you have a biological synthetic? So, okay. I think there's a lot of people on this planet actually who are biological synthetics. This is what a clone kind of is. But they put a piece of a soul into a clone. So a race that is a biological synthetic. There's different layers of synthetics because you have some races that are truly synthetic, but you also have races that are biological and synthetic. Now, the CTRs are biological. You would never get any idea that they were synthetic. In fact, they can reproduce. They don't have a consciousness that persists. So this race called the CTR is a regressive, well, what we would call a regressive race. And it is at odds with the W56s and many other so-called benevolent service to others, as opposed to service to self. That's I find the best way to describe different mindsets, philosophies, and ways of existing that are throughout on Earth and off planet as well. So there's service to self and there's service to others. The W56 is their service to others. The CTR are service to self, and they are at odds, and violently so, with the W56s. Both of these groups come and go from this planet. There are many, many groups of extraterrestrials, underground as well as coming in from other places, that are not only fighting themselves, but fighting here. So there are battles between the CTR and the W56s right here on Earth. In fact, that was when the CTR destroyed the base in Pescara, excuse my Italian. So that is the CTR. They're a regressive group, and they are at odds with the W56. So you may see that we and the CTRs have similar problems, right? How do you get along? How do you figure yourself out? Who are you? Why are we here? Blah, blah. But there's a big difference. We do not have at our disposal a herd to use in our experiments. This is part of what we're going to talk about today. No benevolent service to others extraterrestrial group will ever experiment on or breed anyone without full consent in a natural love, romance, whatever you want to call it, or experience. Many are polyamorous. The Pleiadians are also polyamorous. But we never, and no benevolent group would ever engage in experiments against the full consent and will of another being. So CTR is a service to self. The regressives they don't care. What he's saying here is that the CTRs have a herd at their disposal. What's the herd? The Terrans on this planet. And your beings, and you know. Because that would be you. We're going to get into this today. I got to find a better way of saying, I'm just going to say gov-mil, right? I can't say government and I can't say military. So I'm going to say gov-mil because it's the two of them together. Who are selling you as resource, like gold, like any other, like molybdenum, like titanium, like platinum. You are nothing. You are a resource to be used and exploited. People have to understand that. I think it's hard for a lot of people to come to terms with that understanding. Like fact is like, you are nothing to the gov-mil, but a resource that they have the right. In fact, they're given the right. And that's not only their right, but it's their duty to use the resources on this planet. And you are a resource on this planet. So he's explaining that here. Therefore, we try to understand how human societies are organized, looking for a common substructure that actually is still escaping our efforts. For instance, We haven't yet understood how it may be that you, a relatively primitive people, exhibit parapsychical attitudes that we need dedicated hardware to grasp. So, goes on again. Anytime you hear these people trying to feed you information that the extraterrestrials, so when he says primitive, he means technological. And we understand why technological advancements have been delayed and extremely heavily, violently suppressed. So there are technological advancements that are here on this planet. This planet is operating as any other, well, any other advanced technological planet in the solar system, in the galactic realms. We are on Earth at the same level as the Pleiadians and other groups. The Terrans are not allowed access to even understanding of that stuff, that they're not allowed to know it even exists. And they will fight to the end. This is where we're at a really dangerous, possibly dangerous point. The GovMill, by order of the syndicate, are, there's not enough words to stress, never, they cannot ever allow the resource called human on this planet access to advanced technology at this point. They are going to fight all the way to prevent that from happening. It is not in their interest. So what this guy is explaining is part of the curiosity here, because there are many, and their service to others, they're not necessarily service to self races, who do not want the race on this planet ever to have access. And these are, some of them are benevolent, access to this kind of technology. So that has to be understood. Not only is it the bad guys here and the bad guys upstairs, but it's also a lot of the good guys that are very frightened to give this kind of technology to the race on this planet, because they know that the race on this planet has capabilities, natural capabilities they don't have, and fear. So he says, for instance, we haven't yet understood how it may be that you, a relatively primitive, technologically primitive people, and also spiritually primitive, because of all the brainwashing and everything, exhibit parapsychical attitudes that we need dedicated hardware to grasp. We haven't understood where is the difference, if there's any. And that's one of the subjects we're studying in this moment. I'm studying you much more than you're studying me. So this is well known, not strange. And it's part of the problem as well, because you have a spiritually dysfunctional race. And I'm not saying it's their fault. I don't know. I think genetically there's some serious, I have serious concerns genetically, and many other ET do as well, with this race, that they are, because of some kind of, I'm not sure how, I imagine some of the breeding that's been done, and that was done on purpose to use them as mercenaries, but also to create the constant, because if you have to have a race that's constantly fighting, you have to have some kind of genetic marker that is enhancing that kind of violent, aggressive nature in the animal itself, which is what you see here. They bred for that because they want a fighting race. They want a race that they can use to fight off planet, but also a race that will fight amongst itself, be very tribal, very aggressive, very fear-based, very reactive, to maintain that discord, to maintain that separation, to maintain the concepts of others, to maintain concepts of exclusion. Plus, it's a lot easier to train, because then, if you look at school systems, etc., you can take the individuals in the society that you want to colonize and then use as a resource, where they're not aware that this is being done, because they're so busy either striving in order to, because they have a heightened sense of ego. And the W56 also mentions that that the people, and I've mentioned that, when people want to have a life like they do on the Pleiades, I don't know if that's possible, simply because you have to be very driven by, I don't use the word reducing, but seeing yourself, your physical form, in connection with all those around you. So one for all for one kind of concept. You have to have that concept. All for one for all. But I think that's been bred out of the race here. And we all have ego, but the ego here is one of striving, one of greed, one of holding a genetic desire to have more than, to be better than. I don't think it's just sociological. I think it's actually genetic. But again, I can't prove that or saying that. Anyway, not all of them, obviously, but that's a problem. Going back to psychic abilities, when we think of bringing forth things that we call remembering or memories, those are all there inside you. They're all there. They're in your subconscious. So when we do things like telepathy, quantum entanglement, thought transfer, whatever you want to call it, when we do remote viewing, and it's all the same, it's just how you want it to go. It comes from the activation of the subconscious. It doesn't come from outside of you. When you telepath with someone else, there's someone outside of you you're talking to, obviously. When you remote view a structure, you're remote viewing something outside of you. But as a Terran, and for those of us who are envoys, even though we have our extraterrestrial consciousness, the extraterrestrial consciousness is enhanced because it's running a body that can handle this stuff. So you're pulling from the subconscious. So when someone begins to speak a light language, when somebody has visions or memories from home, when someone has information, it's not channeled. I actually don't think there's any such thing as channeling per se. And that's a new age topic. We don't have words like, we don't. So if you ask a Pleiadian about channeling, we don't channel. We don't have a word for channeling. We use telepathy or remote viewing. We don't ever allow something else to, well, if you think about your body, you're you're the thing running the body, right? But we don't allow other things through. But a lot of what people are getting, whether it's through song, through movement, through memories, through light language, what we call light language, or remembering a language, that is from your subconscious. It's not coming from outside. It's not coming from the higher you. I'm going to say this, right? There's no such thing as a higher you. The, there is no ETU. There's you. That consciousness that was born on a different planet is now here in you. The body that you left is in stasis. That is not conscious. It is nothing. It's just a form. There is not a higher you. That's an ET. ETs are not higher. That people need to get. If you hear that, either the person is misinformed, or they're being fed information that is incorrect. Because I never say people are bad. Are there, I don't even address, are there shysters? Of course, we're not even talking about them. We're only talking about people who are misinformed and who may be being fed information from somewhere else. And that information usually will stress the fact that you're somehow less than, that you have to have something from outside of yourself, that there was this ETU that was somehow, oh, wow, had magical powers, was beautiful, was this, was that, or whatever. You are that. The consciousness that is driving the body you are in now on this planet for this operation is an extraterrestrial consciousness, because there's no such thing as extraterrestrials. There are only beings who are born off planets. That's it. And you have different beings and races and those kinds of things. So when you are pulling up, when you suddenly begin to speak in this other language, or you're drawing, or you're writing symbols, or you're seeing symbols, or you're having memories from home, or you're dancing, or you're getting a song, or you're hearing music, that is from your subconscious, unless it's being telepathed to you from a family member. That is coming up from your subconscious. So in order to access telepathy, remote viewing, memories, it is coming from within your subconscious. A benevolent extraterrestrial will never do that for you. That comes from within you. They don't, because they don't have the right to do that. They don't have the right to enter your body. No one. That's the one thing on this planet. No one has the right to enter your body. Someone who enters your body or demands things from your body is not a service to others. They are a service to self. That is not okay. They are not benevolent. But that is actually how you bring up your psychic there. It is in you. The psychic powers that you have are in you. They come up from you. That's how that works. So hopefully that was empowering. I mean, that's my goal is to get folks to, and like I said, don't believe what I tell you. I just say shit. But nothing is outside of you. Everything is within you. But that doesn't mean, because when you understand that you are, as Semyasi said, based upon our religion, because that's all it is. But if it resonates with you, Semyasi says you are love. That's how the Pleiadians operate. That's how the Hell operate, and the other different cultures on Era operate. That love is in everything. It's in a tree, it's in a flower, it's in a squirrel, it's in a horse, it's in you, it's in your neighbor. So when you connect with somebody else, you're connecting to love is coming together. The love that is in you, that you are, that is in you, that radiates from you. The love they are is in them, it radiates from them. And that's how we express and engage. So love isn't something that you, as she says, love isn't something that you have to learn or practice. Love is something that you are. So anyway, I want to bring this video, mess with my messing. Let's see, let's put screen share, because it's just everything explained in this video. I'm gonna pull it up. Share. All right. Is service to self. No, I'm not talking about the people in the video. It is Dr. Sal and JP, right? I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about what they're talking about. So JP is going to be talking about some of the hybridization programs, and it's quite actually shocking. What shocks me and the people who are running the videos, I'm not blaming them. I'm not trying to charge them with anything, but it amazes me that they don't, I don't know, they don't seem to get it, because no benevolent, and I actually wrote a comment. I had to. I was just like, it just bothered me so much because I know what my husband went through. It's shocking that there's a sort of cool factor or curiosity, like it's just an aspect of disclosure that humans are being abducted, raped, and forcibly bred in programs by the govmill. That is not benevolent. That is not allowed. And Eeka, as you know, as with many other, and I'm going to talk about the other extraterrestrials that were, my books here, forcibly used in this program. Any extraterrestrial that would willingly engage in rape and breeding without the consent of the other party is not benevolent. So I'm going to play. I'm sorry, guys, I can't do full screen because for some reason with the Worcester State Zoom, it freezes. So here we go. I think I probably know who he is. But so it's anonymous, similar to how I was anonymous when I first came out.
So for people that maybe don't know, what JP is referring to here is Congressman Matt Gaetz doing an interview where he discussed a whistleblower that came to him and told him that the US government or the Pentagon is involved in genetic experiments where you have extraterrestrials, producing offspring with humans, creating hybrids. And so this was an interview that Gaetz. So
in a military uniform, worked for the United States Army, that was briefing me on the locations of hybrid breeding programs where captured aliens were breeding with humans to create some hybrid race that could engage.
So I hate keeping her, but so he said this, and I not, it's very, very likely, like I don't know the person, that these people who were in the military saw this. They were using, as he says here, captured aliens. That happened to Eeka. So it'll be interesting for folks to ask their contacts about any of these programs. They may not remember because they were drugged. So Eeka did not remember any of this stuff. He didn't know what happened to him until we started remote viewing it and he started getting the flashbacks. This was after his court experience. So he was one of the, so here we go. Right? Eeka was one of the aliens that was abducted by the military against his will and had genetic material and blood removed more than once for breeding programs likely here on Earth, as well as with the Greys, the regressive Greys. He was also tortured to the point of close to death many times by the military. And this kind of activity is not benevolent. This is a Nuremberg Code violation. So we've been kind of talking about this now that I wonder if they've used any of his genetic material to impregnate or create. They wouldn't be hybrids because they're human, but to create sort of a cross race being, and what would they be doing that for? So the idea that the military and the government has a force-based experimental breeding, or not experimental, probably a mix, breeding program of abducted or probably bred Earthlings with violently held, captured, tortured, drugged extraterrestrials is a real problem. This is not benevolent. This is 100% regressive. It should not, this is the question, it has zero legal allowance in any benevolent galactic court system. This is not allowed. So why is it happening? It is not disclosure. It is not cool. This is a horror movie.
Galactic communication. An actual uniformed member of the United States Army briefed me on that. What the F is going on? Look, wait a second. You had whistleblowers tell you this kind of thing? Can you please unpack that? I had a guy who was uniformed. He was a senior enlisted with the United States Army. He came into my office in Crestview, Florida, in a non-classified setting. I had members of my staff there, and what they explained is that the military ran a very secret program where aliens that were living were in forced breeding programs with humans that had been abducted from.
Okay. Aliens in forced breeding programs with humans that have been abducted. And we're going to find out from where.
Zones and from even the caravans of migrants. Now, again, I didn't verify this, but what the whistleblower was telling me is that there were like between 6 and 12 locations around the country where this happened. And what he...
So you see all this roundup of illegals, right? That's where they're getting the bodies to breed. Yeah. He just said, the caravans and yeah, and children are being trafficked from there. These are what we call in the trafficking trade disposable people, and that means that there are people that no one will miss, or people that don't have the economic standing, or people that don't have the power in this society here to voice any concerns. These are the people that they are using for many of the different interstellar ICC syndicate programs for food, for research, for military use, for breeding programs, for experimentation. And if you can think that is somehow what shocks me here in this conversation is that this is just seen as a perk, as isn't that interesting aspect of disclosure. This is an interstellar, barbaric human rights violation.
It was a group members of Congress to all show up at the same time at all of these different locations so that any of those activities could not be moved. And of course, it's a physical impossibility to get members of Congress to simultaneously show up at like 8 locations at one time, and so that never occurred.
What do you mean non-human biologics? Like this?
Well, that was the testimony of David Grush before the House Oversight Committee, which I joined, and the testimony was that in crashes of craft that had been recovered by the CIA and through a special program that the CIA had for crash recovery, that it wasn't just the hard materials, it was also biologics, but that they couldn't identify a human source of those biologics. The public, I mean, I had someone come in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for showing that. So that whistleblower that Matt Gaetz is referring to, that he met in his office there in Crestview, Florida, is the same area as where you live. And so what are the chances in your view that he actually served with you or served with the Army 7th Special Forces Group at Eglin Air Force Base?
So people need to understand the location also. The location of Crestview is actually, 25 from that office where he met with Matt Gaetz. From that office, it's 25 minutes away from 7th Group Special Forces Unit. It's not hidden, people can find it. And he said that he was a senior Army personnel, and the only Army unit that are in Eglin Air Force Base, we got the 6th Ranger Regiment, but that's a training, not unless he's training the Rangers how to do, because also the MOS, well, I'm not going to get into that because of security reasons. But yeah, we got 6th Ranger Regiment that is stationed here in Eglin Air Force Base. That's only for training purposes. And we got 7th Group Special Forces Unit that we just have things that nobody would imagine that we have. I think personally is one of the best units that is out there, and I support this unit 100%. Nobody can mess around with this part of the military. It is the best of the best, and some other people, some other types of units, come out from this unit and branch up with other units. Some people call it rainbow units or something like that. But I won't get into the details because of security measures, and you have to respect these other soldiers that are coming out, and they're not wearing the helmet. They're just going straight to the head, and saying what it is, And what I did, I went this route instead of other routes. So I'm sure somebody's giving him the green light the same way. It's probably the same guy. Give him the green light to talk about these experience that he had, because I when I went into these missions, when I went into
I have no words to describe how anyone could just hear that. The human beings were taken out of ships and and off the street and used in breeding experiments. And he calls, I'm sorry, JP, you call that an experience? These people are having the military who saw this were just having an experience, like they saw a ship. My brain can't process that. Taking genetic material from humans and other things, I'm sure as well, to be used in forced breeding experiences are not a great meal. It's always just these little soldiers are coming forward with their little experiences. Isn't this intriguing? This is a fucking Nazi level human rights violation. What on how anyone cannot be floored in horror? My mind can't process that.
Missions, it was more than one soldiers that were with me and part of the same unit. Sometimes, if you look at the history of Eglin Air Force Base, we got the Marines stationed there. We got Army, we got Navy, and also the Navy that connects to Pensacola Base. There's a Navy Pensacola Base that's also is there. And then on top of that,
My father was almost sent when I was a child. My father was almost sent to Pensacola, and they were going to go. And then, like, the last minute, they didn't. And that was an intervention, because had I been taken down to Pensacola, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, for sure. It would have been over.
from Crestview, Florida, is only 30 minutes away from Alabama, where we had that experience, where I had that experience where they also moved Space Command to that portion of Huntsville, Alabama. So it's a whole connection. And then you go to also to the west, and then you got Louisiana and Nasquias, that it's also
This, I mean, look at how exciting this is. Wow, we're all connected. Look at all these wonderful military bases with their heroic soldiers and military, blah, blah. It's like, you just segue into, like, look, like, how happy, like, oh, this is so fun. I love the military. They're so amazing. You were just fucking talking about experimental breeding programs with human beings. It's like,
place where connects with NASA and
NASA, founded by the Nazis. Paperclip.
stuff. So it's really interesting, these soldiers now coming out. And it's not only going to be the U.S. Army. We're going to have Marines coming out. We're going to have Navy officers or Navy lower enlisted coming out. And it's happening in D.C. These people are coming out. But the experience that we're going through is really affecting us, Doc. In certain ways, we see things that people don't see. It's like you go to a room and you start seeing this levitating, and you're asking yourself, how is that levitating, and why is it levitating in front of me? And then you start questioning reality. And this is where all this.
No, you don't. That's just science. That's just technology. Why is that so? There's nothing weird about that. There's nothing weird about being able to levitate an object. You can actually buy toys that levitate using that magnetic levitation. Like, there's nothing. This is all technology. A craft, electrogravitic propulsion, free energy. All it's just technology. There's nothing amusing about that at all. It's just shit you don't have in front of you, because they don't want you to have it in front of you.
Of course, we go through missions and we do what we need to do as soldiers, But when we see other things like that, it brings the PTSD level a little bit higher. So they need to find out and pick certain soldiers that is not going to take it as much to the heart. And I think that's one of the reasons why I went through.
Yeah, you have to pick a certain soldier that's that doesn't take things to heart. Yeah, when they see when they're involved in abduction and I mean, yeah, you have to have no empathy. You have to have no humanity left inside you. You have to find soldiers that have no humanity left inside them. That's my opinion in these kind of situations.
Experience, and through these missions that we have it in the books that you have wrote, and people can pick that up on exopolitics.org. You have all three, U.S. Army Insider 1, 2, and 3, and it's good documentation of the
documentation of Dark Fleet, SSP, Space Force, syndicate military. These are mercenary militaries. that travel through space and protect the interests of the syndicate, their gun running, their mining interests, their chemical interests, their human trafficking. That's what they do. They protect that. And they bring stuff back to different planets, and this is one of the planets where the cabal and the syndicate run their thing. So I don't know where to, and I said I don't like to. I never really do that. I would never do that. Normally, bring out a video like that. But I think that this was so shocking that these people, these individuals, and the people who are watching this video, and I mentioned it to Michael Salla the other day. I'm like, I can't come on your show again because I don't think your audience would, I don't think we have anything in common. So, yeah, you've got people who just want to hear what they want to hear, that it's all happy camper, all the good guys are running around, and they are actually hearing. And if you read the comments, they actually just heard about a breeding program. And no one was, in fact, Dr. Salla never said anything about that. Wow, that was just something, just a little blip about there. These people all think it's interesting. They think it's amazing. Wow, how cool. I have no, I mean, and I don't have, I'm not a, sensitive person when it comes to like, I know what's out there. I know how things run, but and this goes back to what I think is actually going on when they did the Epstein list and all that stuff like that. And people are coming forward with the different types of horrific things that occurred, and nobody cares. And here it is right here. It's not shocking anyone. People just don't give a shit. And this goes even further to where many, and then it actually goes back to where I looped in the beginning, where do we really want this race interstellar? Are they going to be capable? I know some would be. So there's going to have to be some kind of protection put in place to separate out those people who lack empathy and those people who have human empathy. Because if you're not processing what actually was being said here, I don't know what to tell you. My husband saw it, and many of your ET contacts who are working in the military saw it, and they can't unsee it. And we're at that point now where I was wondering if any of the materials that they took in the military from him were used to make children here, and what happened to those children. So while it's not my genetic material, he has a definite concern that, wow, what if they made a child here? Where is this child? He feels like Eeka is very protective. He's got a lot of love, even though he's quiet and innocent. And it's it is very hard for him to think, I can't save these kids. I don't know if they're still alive. I don't know what happened to them. And I can't save them. To realize you have children that you don't know where they are. Possibly that you have them and you don't know what, because it wasn't the happy camper. I mean, that a forced breeding program is never been, that's Nazi. This is like someone, reporting what they saw in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II, and everybody thinks it's interesting and cool. I'm just, I don't know. Well, I guess we're moving towards that cyborg transhuman society because you simply lack empathy. And your level of hatred is got to be off the charts, where people and taken off the street, disposable people, that's what they're called in trafficking, because no one can trace them. are taken off the street, and largely children, and used in horrific situations. You should watch Rebecca. I'll put Rebecca Rose's latest videos in the comment section. So maybe I think these people who don't get it really need to watch some of that stuff for what child rape looks like and what people who've been through that looks like. And it's still happening because it's never going to stop on this planet, because that's what this planet is. Because the people on this planet are not demanding anything. And it's so complicated. I have hope, because we have to have hope, that things are going to move forward. And I've been in touch with a man, and I can't reveal who it is. He is a visitor. He's in Europe right now, but he's been coming to me every single day. And I asked Eeka, because I had a suspicion that it might be some kind of arrangement that's going on here. And I might, and it's a concern, because obviously they want Eeka dead, so he can't come to me, because they'll definitely target him. But it might be acceptable for another visitor, and it has to be a man, because we may need protection. And this is kind of what we're and I, Eka gets a little overprotective, so I don't know if that's legit or not, but that was part of the conversation, is that to get a man, here. And this guy's been like coming every single day telepathically. And it's this guy. So yeah, you guys, just in case some of you are getting this, and this is for the women, because we always give the women male escorts on this planet, and on any planet where there's barbarity. So because you live on a highly dangerous, sociopathic, regressive, violent place, that if anything starts to break down, so a lot of the safety that people think they have here isn't actually safety. It's just because a lot of people don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to have bad things happen to them. This doesn't mean that they're not, but they're bad people. They're service to self. And there's a lot of them. A lot. And once, or if some of the structure here starts to break down, children and women are going to be in grave danger. Now, men will be too, but you don't have as much barbarity towards them as there will be towards the females on this planet and the children on this planet. So when there's no law, when there's no punishment, this is a key. Now you're going to have a planet that is under basically what we call sovereignty. And benevolent planets like Era, like Venus, like some of the Alpha Centauri, Tau Ceti, blah, blah, the planets. Procyon, well, that got screwed over, but any of the planets that are benevolent planets do not have police forces, because we don't need them. Why do you need them here? We're going to find out what happens when governing militaristic force is removed from a population. And I know humans are loving, but there are some great humans, that's for sure. I'm not worried about them. That's not the problem. The nice people, the loving people, the benevolent, we're not worried about them. But there is a large, large percentage of beings on this planet, humans on this planet, that are service to self. And once you remove control, they will express their desires. This is a real problem. And I'm hoping that if that occurs, the benevolent alliance, and I don't mean the white hat, I mean, but there's the ET benevolent alliance that's made of 750,000 different races and beings, will stop or intervene what's going to actually happen here, because it's going to be very, very bad. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think we just have to have, I hope that there's some kind of plan, a contingency, some understanding of what's going to be happening on this planet, where we're going. That's why I'm getting fit, because I think it's really important. And I hate to say it to people, but I'm telling you the truth. If shit happens to hit the fan here, if you are not healthy, if you have any problems, you're not going to make it. It's going to be Lord of the Flies, unless we have some kind of intervention. But even if we do, there's going to be a gap. So if you're not physically fit right now, if you can't be, I don't know what to tell you. It's going to get really bad. But if you're just not physically fit right now, you're going to regret that decision, should you need to be. Why did JP just post, I'll put the link in the description, a video, a music video of Bluebeam? It was freaky. People are, it is something like what I've seen in visions, and other folks have mentioned in visions. Now, that doesn't mean that that's going to happen at all. It's a remote view. It's a vision, right? But I have seen multiple times large numbers of craft, and they begin to fire. Now, in his Bluebeam video, you'll actually see beams coming down off these craft. Other folks have had visions like this too. Why did he post a video, a music video, when this guy is usually all love and light and Akuria Mate and I love everybody and let's all get together and kiss Jesus and all that shit? Why, out of all his work, did he suddenly create a video that's called Bluebeam? And it shows a really creepy, bizarre video. So I'll put the link below, and I'll leave that up to you to decide what's going on there. It's definitely strange, but I think maybe because I'm a Libra, I like to have all of my, I like to have many ABC plans there, just in case whatever's going to happen. If we get total shit here, where it's like we're all going to basically get killed, it's like, I'm going to take as many with me as I can. I'm going to be fighting. But, oh, and Will, so folks don't know. So Eeka is on the base in California, and Will was our friend of ours. Will's real name is Tyridian, but he doesn't use that. He uses his Earth name, Will. But I just received information the day that he has to have a chip put in. And I don't mean it. Ig is funny. He's like, you should have a lobotomy. Well, like, he doesn't need a lobotomy. Will you stop? He has a terrible sense of humor. It's so, sometimes like, stop. If anybody needs one, it's like both of us. So Will is not immune to shit. Will was almost murdered on Sirius B. So Will knows what terror feels like. He knows what starvation feels like. He knows what suffering feels like. So Will is not, immune to anything, and hasn't had a fairy tale existence, but they said to put a chip in, and it's going to be for communications. So that's been done. Why? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why they're doing these things. Of course, I said Eeka's already a cyborg. He's got chips everywhere, but because they need them. That's the thing, So Terrans, this is why they're so valuable upstairs. This is why they're used as mercenaries. This is why they're bred. This is why they're cloned. This is why they're sold for a lot of goodies. Very valuable. A Terran SSP. These guys and ladies can fly the fucking ships without enhancements, and they're very good at it. So, Penny Bradley is in Darkfleet. So many, and Rebecca Rose was part of it. I mean, it's a lot of folks. You yourself probably have been part of it. It's a major selling factor to create MK Ultra and all that, to enhance. And that's why they did that, because the Terrans are so perfect for enhancement that they can be used in mercenary armies. So a lot of your extraterrestrials have to have a lot of augmentation technology put into their bodies in order to do these things. Where a Terran can fly a scout ship, can fly a scout in battle without that technology. But someone like my husband, Eeka, has to have the technology in order to interface BCI with the computer systems on the ship. But anyway, enough is enough. So we will be in touch again. Hopefully be able to put up some more videos. I'm definitely doing a lot better. I've got everything lined up. My body is back in communication, so I'm not all fractured and like screwed up. And so hopefully all y'all are healing as well and doing well. Yes, what can I say? So anyway, we will see you upstairs.